Hello again, friends. I have another story for you. This one is from the continent of Australia. It is an Aboriginal story, and it is about the Island of the Dead. And the Island of the Dead is an actual real place. It's not just some mystical island that they've made up for the story. It is actually a real island. It'd be very cool if you looked for the Island of the Dead on a globe or on a map, so you can see exactly where that is and where they're talking about. Interesting thing about the Aboriginal people of Australia, they created many stories, like many cultures did and still do, to explain things that happen. Particularly, Aborigines like to say that their ancestors became the tall oak tree, or their ancestors became the sun, or their ancestors became the kangaroo. So they like to explain how things became by saying that their ancestors became those things, the people that came before them. Those who what ancestors are, the people that came before them. So this story is one of those, trying to explain a star in the sky, and this one is called Lighting the Way, an Aboriginal story from Australia. In the dream time, the spirit girl Barnum Beer lived on the Island of the Dead. She was a happy girl, content to do her many chores, but she always made time to spend with her friends. Barnum Beer's friends shared many of her interests, save one. While those girls often went fishing with the men in their bark canoes, Barnum Beer preferred to stay on land. She would swim in the shallow waters close to shore, but she never journeyed out onto the water. She said it was because she had once dreamt that her spirit had been lost out on the ocean, and that is why she feared the deeper waters. One day, Barnum Beer's two closest friends, two sisters, announced that they would soon be leaving on a sea voyage with their brother, who was planning on making his home far from the Island of the Dead. When Barnum Beer heard this, she was greatly saddened. "You are my closest friends," she told the sisters. "Please don't go. I shall miss you terribly." Here's one of the pictures from this story. Look at that beautiful artwork. That's Barnum Beer right there. Yes, thinking, being very pensive. The two sisters hugged their friend. "We don't wish to leave either," they said, "but our brother needs us. We must help him make the long journey by boat, and then we will be able to help build his home. We must go with our brother." Barnum Beer thought for a moment and then announced, "I will go with you. I am afraid of the sea, but I cannot bear the idea of your leaving." The two sisters smiled but shook their heads. "There is only room for 3 in the boat. We will have to stay behind." Barnum Beer was determined to go with her friends, but did not know how she would manage to accompany them on their sea voyage. She asked others on the island if there was a larger canoe that could carry all of them, but was told that her friend's canoe was the longest there was. She offered to paddle another canoe alongside her friend's boat, but she was told that the strength of one girl would not be enough. Then someone suggested that Barnum Beer visit Johnlin, the magician. Perhaps he could turn her into a star that could light the way for her friend's canoe. She considered this for a time. Finally, unable to think of any other way she could go with her friends, Barnum Beer went to Johnlin. "Is it true that you can make me into a star that can travel through the air just above my friend's canoe?" she asked. "Yes," Johnlin replied. "I can sing a magic song and make you a star." He looked directly at Barnum Beer and then continued, "But you must know something. When you are no longer in sight of the Island of the Dead, I will have no way of calling you back. You will have to stay a star forever, and forever travel over the water. You must think this over carefully before you decide." Barnum Beer was even more confused. She went to ask the advice of 2 wise old women on the island. The women sat on the ground rolling fibers of pandanus root between their hands and thighs. They coiled this thin rope round and round, forming it into a large basket that sat between them. "Please, I need your help," Barnum Beer said to the two old women. "I wish to become a star to help guide my friends as they journey across the sea. John the magician has said that he can sing his magic and make me a star, but that when I am no longer inside of our island, he will not be able to bring me back home. What shall I do?" The two women sat in silence for a long time. They continued rolling the pandanus root fibers and building the sides of the basket. At last, one of them spoke. "We must think this over. Come back tomorrow, and we will have something to tell you." Barnum Beer returned to the old women's hut the next morning. She could hardly wait to hear what the wise ones would say, but she waited until one of them spoke first. "We have considered your problem," one woman said. "We can help you. The way we see it, the sun will light the way for your friends by day. At night, the stars high in the heavens will guide them. It is during the early mornings that your friends will need a light the most." The woman fell silent. The other woman spoke. "Let Johnlin the magician make his magic so that you can float as a star above your friend's canoe each morning." "But what will become of me when I am far from the island of the dead?" asked Barnum Beer, fearful that the old women in fact could not help her. "We shall tie a long piece of rope to you," replied the first old woman. "When the sun has awakened you from his sleep, we will pull you back to this basket. You will remain here on the island with your people each day and each night, but we will let out the rope just before the night stars have faded, so that you may light the way for all those who wander about in the early morning hours." And so it is to this day. Just before dawn, you can spot the morning star in the sky. Her light is small, but bright. Once the sun is up, Barnum Beer's work is over, and she is gone, back to the island of the dead, where she still lives. So before I read the story to you, starry, that's funny, right? Because she's a star. This story to you, I said that Aboriginal people believe that their ancestors became different things in nature, well, like trees or like animals or like stars or the sun or the moon. So I want you to think, what would it be cool in nature for your ancestors to have been? What did your ancestors become? What do you feel closest to in nature? And why do you think that you are drawn to that? And if you are listening and watching, you might have seen a little mockingbird go right over the edge of my roof, right up here, right by my plant. I am really drawn to birds, to animals of all kinds, but birds. My mom is a bird rehabilitator, and so my whole life I grew up with songbirds in my house. Whether they were babies or they had been hurt, we had a whole room that was dedicated just to songbirds. So I feel very, very close to birds, and I think probably my mom, maybe, if you believe in that kind of thing, maybe she would come back as a bird, and I would feel very close to birds, and I do. I really love watching them and listening to them, and you might hear some behind me as I'm reading too. I hope that you've enjoyed this beautiful Aboriginal story from the continent of Australia, lighting the way, the story of Barnum Beer and how she became the morning star. Have a great weekend, friends, and I'll see you again next week.